I work as a facilities engineer for the Duluth Public Works Department. My days are spent inspecting bridges, clearing storm drains, repairing retaining walls along the lakefront, and maintaining the city's aging infrastructure. It is predictable work, union-protected, with benefits I rely on now that I am no longer on Mara's health plan. The divorce was finalized in June, 8 months ago. We had been living apart for 14 months before that, so the signing of papers felt less like an ending and more like the final stamp on something already decided. Mara kept the house in Woodland, the split level with the big backyard that backs up to the elementary school our son attends. I received every other weekend and one evening a week, provided I remain current on support and give reasonable notice. I have never missed a payment. My son, Elias, is 11 now. He remembers the years when I came home late, reeking of diesel from overtime shifts and whatever I had used to quiet the noise in my head. He remembers the raised voices, the nights I slept in the garage because Mara had locked the bedroom door. He remembers promises I made and then broke. I have been sober for 13 months as of last week, but to an 11-year-old boy who has already been disappointed twice, that number does not carry much weight. What matters is whether I show up on time, stay present, and keep the plans I make. Words are cheap, routine is proof. For months I had been searching for a way to give him something better than the usual weekend of takeout pizza and streamed movies in my one-bedroom apartment off London Road. I wanted distance from the city, from the familiar streets where every corner reminded us both of what used to be. I wanted a place where we could build new memories that did not have to compete with the old ones. I spent evenings after work scrolling through rental listings on VRBO and Airbnb, filtering for northern Minnesota, winter availability, 2 bedrooms, and prices that would not wipe out half my monthly budget. I avoided resorts and lodges. Too many people, too much noise. I was looking for quiet, for woods deep enough to feel separate from everything else. Eventually I found a listing that seemed right. Pine Hollow Retreat, a cedar-sided cabin on 10 private acres near Isabella, about 2 hours north of Duluth. The photos showed a single-story structure with a wraparound deck, stone fireplace, and a trail system leading into Superior National Forest. The rate was reasonable, $160 a night in winter, and the reviews were sparse but positive. Peaceful, great for unplugging, perfect snowshoeing. One reviewer mentioned the caretaker lived nearby and was very attentive. I booked Friday through Sunday in late February, paid the deposit, and printed the confirmation. I told myself this would be different. No phone scrolling, no drifting off into my own thoughts. I would plan activities, snowshoeing, a short hike to an old logging camp marked on the trail map, hot chocolate by the fireplace, maybe teaching Elias how to split kindling safely. Structured time. Proof that I could be relied upon. The pickup was scheduled for 3 p.m. on Friday at the Cub Foods parking lot in West Duluth. Mara had insisted on a public, neutral location ever since the separation. I arrived at 2:47 and parked near the entrance, engine running to keep the cab warm. February air in Duluth is sharp. Even with the sun out, the temperature hovered around 20 degrees. At 3:02 Mara's silver Outback pulled in. Elias climbed out of the back seat carrying his navy backpack and a small duffel. He wore the gray Patagonia jacket I had bought him last Christmas, already a little short in the sleeves, and a wool hat pulled low over his sandy hair. He is tall for his age, thin like his mother, with serious hazel eyes that watch everything carefully. Mara stepped out to hand me the duffel. She is 2 years younger than I am, but the last few years have left faint lines around her eyes that were not there before. Her dark hair was pulled back, and she wore the same practical expression she used when discussing schedules or school conferences. His inhaler is in the front pocket of the backpack, she said. He's had a little wheezing with the cold air lately. Use it before bed if he needs it. Got it. There's extra socks and long underwear in the duffel. The forecast says single digits overnight up there. I packed for that. She looked at me for a moment, the way she does when she is deciding whether to say more. Just be present, Nathan. That's all he needs right now. No checking work email every 10 minutes, no zoning out. I know. She nodded, then turned to Elias. Call me if you need anything, okay? Have fun. She gave him a quick hug, climbed back into the Outback, and drove away without lingering. Elias stood on the curb holding his bags. I got out and met him halfway. Hey, buddy. Hey. We loaded his things into the back seat of my Silverado. He buckled himself in the passenger side without being asked. I pulled out of the lot and headed north on Highway 53, the city thinning behind us as we climbed away from the lake. The first 20 minutes were quiet. Elias stared out the window at the passing landscape, bare hardwoods, stands of spruce, snow-covered fields. The sky was a pale winter blue, the sun low even at mid-afternoon. I left the radio off. I had learned that silence with him was better than forcing conversation too soon. Eventually I spoke. Excited about the cabin? He shrugged. I guess. It's got its own trails. We can snowshoe tomorrow if there's enough base. The listing said the caretaker leaves a couple pairs. Okay. You ever been up near Isabella? Not really. It's quiet. Lots of trees. Used to go camping up that way when I was a kid with your grandpa. He nodded but did not ask for details. I let it go. We passed through cotton, then through rolling forest broken by occasional clearings. Snowmobiles crossed the highway on groomed trails, their engines a distant whine. The road narrowed, the shoulders disappearing under drifts. I kept the speed steady, hands relaxed on the wheel. I had promised myself I would not fill every silence with chatter. If he wanted to talk, he would. If not, the quiet was still time together. Around Biwabik the sun dropped behind the ridge, turning the snow pink and then gray. Elias shifted in his seat and pulled a paperback from his backpack, some fantasy novel with a dragon on the cover. He opened it and began reading by the fading light. I glanced over once or twice, noting the way he held the book close, the way his lips moved slightly as he read. Small things I had missed during the years I was not fully there. By the time we turned onto the county road toward Isabella, full dark had settled. My headlights cut through walls of pine, reflecting off snowbanks. The GPS directed me onto a plowed forest road that wound deeper into the woods. Elias closed his book and watched the trees slide past. Almost there, I said. Elias looked at the cabin, then at the dark trees beyond. He did not smile, but he did not look unhappy either. We got out. The air was still and bitterly cold, the kind that burns the inside of your nose. Somewhere far off an owl called once. Then everything was quiet again. I grabbed our bags from the back seat. Elias stood beside me, breath clouding in the porch light. For the first time in a long while, I felt something close to hope. 2 days. Just the two of us. A chance to show him I could keep a promise. That was the plan, anyway. We stepped inside, and the warmth hit immediately, a contrast to the biting cold outside. The cabin smelled of aged cedar and faint wood smoke, the kind that lingers in walls after years of fires. The front door opened directly into the main living area, a compact space with knotty pine paneling, a stone fireplace dominating one wall, and a worn leather sofa facing it. To the left, a small kitchen with oak cabinets, a 4-burner propane stove, and a refrigerator that hummed steadily. 2 bedrooms branched off a short hallway at the back, each with a double bed and simple quilts. Everything was clean, functional, exactly as the listing had promised. I set our bags down near the door and located the thermostat on the wall, set low for vacancy. I turned it up to 68 degrees, and the baseboard heaters began to click as they warmed. Elias removed his hat and jacket, hanging them on hooks by the entrance, then stood in the center of the room surveying it quietly. Pick a bedroom, I said. The one on the left has a bigger window. He nodded and carried his duffel down the hall. I heard the creak of bed springs as he tested the mattress. A black 3-ring binder lay prominently on the kitchen counter, beside a small stack of local maps and a flashlight. The cover read Pine Hollow Retreat, guest information in neat block letters. I opened it while Elias explored. The first section contained standard instructions. Propane tank location, breaker panel behind the pantry door, check out at 11 a.m. sharp on Sunday. Wi-Fi network and password were listed, though the signal indicator on my phone showed only one flickering bar. Then came the house rules, laminated for durability. No smoking indoors. Quiet hours after 10 p.m. replace any firewood used from the shed. Trails are marked. Stay on designated paths. Snowshoes available in the mudroom. Return clean. The list continued normally until the final page, where the formatting shifted to a bolder font and a separate heading. Property boundaries and safety guidelines. Do not venture beyond the marked trail loops after sunset. Interior trails remain open until dusk only. The northern loop, marked red on the trail map, is closed indefinitely due to unstable terrain. If you hear whispering or your name called from the trees, do not respond. Return to the cabin immediately and secure the doors. Report any unusual sounds or sightings to the caretaker promptly. I read the last 2 points twice. The phrasing was precise, matter-of-fact, without humor or disclaimer. No mention of local pranks or wildlife explanations. I flipped back through the binder. No addendum, no joke. Just those instructions, as if they belonged alongside reminders about recycling. Elias emerged from the hallway. The window looks out on trees. It's cool. Good choice. I closed the binder. House rules are here. Mostly standard stuff. He glanced at it but did not open it. Can we check the trails before it gets too dark? I looked out the window. The porch light illuminated a narrow path leading into the pines, snow-packed firm from prior use. Sunset was already fading. In February this far north, full dark would arrive soon. Quick look only. We'll do a proper snowshoe tomorrow. We pulled our jackets back on and stepped out the back door onto the deck. 3 steps down led to the trailhead, marked by a wooden post with a carved arrow pointing into the forest. The snow was deep but trampled along the path, likely by the caretaker. Tall pines closed in quickly, their branches heavy with fresh powder. Our boots crunched rhythmically. The air carried the sharp scent of resin and cold earth. The trail looped gently uphill, winding between spruce and birch. Small signs nailed to trees indicated distances. 0.5-mile loop, 1.2-mile loop. A larger map board at the first junction showed the full system. 3 interconnected loops, the northernmost marked in red with a handwritten note. Closed, hazardous. We followed the shortest loop. Elias walked a few steps ahead, occasionally pausing to examine animal tracks crossing the path. Deer, perhaps rabbit. The forest was silent except for our movement and the occasional creak of branches under snow weight. About 10 minutes in, Elias stopped. Did you hear that? I listened. Nothing but the faint whistle of wind high in the treetops. What? Like whispering. I strained to hear. Perhaps the wind shifting branches, creating a susurrus. Probably just the pines. They make sounds when the breeze moves through needles. He nodded uncertainly and continued. We completed the short loop without further comment, emerging back at the deck as the last light drained from the sky. The cabin windows glowed warmly against the dark trees. Inside, I started a fire in the stone hearth using kindling and split birch from the mudroom stack. Elias sat on the sofa watching the flames catch. I prepared a simple dinner. Brats from Cub Foods, buns, and chips, cooked on the propane stove. We ate at the small dining table, conversation limited to practicalities. Whether the snowshoes would fit him, if the trails would be groomed. Afterward, he claimed fatigue from the drive and retreated to his room. I checked my phone, no signal now. The Wi-Fi router blinked green for power, but red for internet. I reset it twice to no avail. The listing had mentioned spotty service, so I was not surprised. I sat by the fire reviewing the trail map from the binder. The closed northern loop intrigued me. Unstable terrain could mean anything from blowdowns to thinning ice over a wetland. I considered asking the caretaker tomorrow. A firm knock sounded at the front door. 3 measured raps. I glanced at the clock. 8:15 p.m. Elias's door remained closed. Through the small window, I saw a woman on the porch. Mid-60s, perhaps older, sturdy build, wearing a heavy Carhartt jacket, wool hat, and insulated boots. She carried a flashlight pointed downward. I opened the door halfway. Cold air rushed in. "Evening," she said. Voice low, direct. "Edna Larson. I manage the property. Nathan Holt. We just arrived." She nodded. "Saw the truck. Everything working all right. So far. Heat's coming up. Fire's going. Good." She glanced past me into the cabin. "Boy settling in?" "Yes. He's in his room." She handed me a metal key on a pine tree keychain. "Spare in case. Main one's on the hook inside." "Thank you." Her eyes flicked to the binder on the counter, visible from the door. "You read the guidelines?" "Started to." The first full night passed without incident, or so I believed until morning light revealed otherwise. I woke early, around 6:30, to the gray pre-dawn filtering through the bedroom window. The cabin was quiet, the baseboard heaters humming softly. Elias remained asleep in the adjacent room. I brewed coffee in the French press I had packed, the aroma filling the small kitchen, and stood at the back window surveying the snow-covered deck and the trailhead beyond. Fresh tracks marred the packed snow leading from the forest edge to the deck steps. Barefoot impressions, long and narrow, spaced as if made by someone walking deliberately. They began at the tree line, crossed the open area, ascended the 3 steps, and stopped directly in front of the back door. No return prints. The edges were crisp, undisturbed by wind, suggesting they had been made after midnight when the air stilled. I stepped outside in my boots, leaving the door ajar. The cold stung immediately. The prints measured roughly 12 inches long, toes splayed wider than normal, with an elongated heel. No claw marks or animal characteristics. Too humanoid, yet wrong in proportion. I followed them backward to the tree line. There they simply ended, as though the maker had stepped into the pines and vanished. I returned inside, unease settling in my chest. Animal tracks could distort in snow, I reasoned. A prank by local youth, perhaps. Yet the isolation argued against it. Elias emerged around 7:30, hair tousled, rubbing his eyes. Morning. Morning. Sleep okay? Yeah. He poured cereal I had brought. We ate in companionable silence by the fireplace, which I had rekindled. After breakfast we retrieved snowshoes from the mudroom. Aluminum frames with neoprene bindings. They fit Elias adequately. We set out on the groomed 1.2-mile loop under clear winter sky, sun glinting off snow. The trail wound through dense pine, broken by occasional clearings. Elias adjusted quickly to the snowshoes, striding ahead with growing confidence. Halfway through, he stopped abruptly. Dad, listen. I halted. A faint sound drifted through the trees. Whispering, indistinct voices overlapping, too distant to discern words. The pines swayed slightly in a breeze I could not feel at ground level. Wind in the branches, I said. It sounds like people talking. We continued. The whispering faded, then returned intermittently, always from the direction of the closed northern loop. Near the end of the trail, Elias pointed to a tree trunk. Etched into the bark at eye level was a symbol. A rough circle bisected by vertical lines radiating outward, like spokes or fingers reaching. The cuts appeared fresh, sap still oozing in places. Weird, he said quietly. Probably old logging mark, I replied, though it resembled nothing I recognized from forestry work. We completed the loop and returned to the cabin. I photographed the tracks from the morning. They remained visible. And the carved symbol, intending to ask Edna about them. Around noon, I drove the forest road toward her blue house, seeking cell signal. One bar appeared halfway there. I pulled over and texted Mara. Arrived safe. Trail's great. Elias having fun. Signal spotty. She replied quickly, good. Have him call tonight if possible. On impulse, I stopped at Edna's. The Polaris sat outside. She answered my knock promptly. Afternoon. Everything all right? Yes. Just questions about the trails. I showed her the photos on my phone. She studied the barefoot tracks without expression. Snow settles odd sometimes. Makes shapes. And these? I swiped to the carving. Old survey mark. From when they logged here in the 80s. She offered no further explanation. I pressed gently. The whispering we heard, wind? Sound carries strange in these woods. Echoes off ridges. She paused. You read the binder fully? Yes. Then you know what to do if it gets clearer. Her gaze was steady. Stay on the open trails. Especially after dark. I nodded and left, unsatisfied. Back at the cabin, Elias napped on the sofa while I reviewed the binder again. Tucked in a sleeve near the back was a folded sheet. An old hand-drawn map of the property, yellowed with age. It showed the current trails plus the northern loop, labeled in faded ink. Restricted, unstable scar. Along the northern boundary, small crosses marked spots, perhaps old incidents. A note in the margin read, "Do not respond to calls from the pines. They know your name." The phrasing mirrored the printed guidelines precisely. That evening we prepared chili from packets, eating by firelight. Elias seemed subdued, glancing frequently toward windows. Cell service remained absent inside, so no call to Mara. I promised tomorrow. After he went to bed, I sat up reading by the hearth. Around 10:30, the whispering returned, closer now, audible through the walls. Not wind. Syllables formed, overlapping. Nathan. Elias. My name, clear and calm, in a voice resembling my late father's. Then Elias's name, softer in Mara's tone. I stood, heart pounding. The sound emanated from the tree line beyond the deck. I approached the back window cautiously. In the porch light's glow, shadows shifted among the pines, tall, thin silhouettes that might have been trunks swaying, or something else. The voice came again. "Nathan, come see." Exact inflection I used when calling Elias to dinner. Perfect mimicry. I backed away, recalling the binder. "Do not respond. Return immediately and secure doors." The doors were already locked. I double-checked windows, then retreated to the hallway between bedrooms, listening. The whispering persisted for minutes, circling the cabin, then faded gradually. I did not sleep well. Morning brought new developments. Elias emerged pale, claiming nightmares of voices calling him deeper into the woods. While making breakfast, I noticed the mudroom door ajar, though I had closed it firmly after retrieving an axe for kindling. Inside, the snowshoes lay rearranged, one pair positioned as if worn recently, bindings loosened. More tracks encircled the cabin overnight, some approaching windows. I decided to drive into Isabella for supplies and signal. The truck started normally, but halfway down the forest road, it lurched. I pulled over. The left rear tire was flat, sidewall slashed cleanly, not punctured by road debris, no spare in the rental agreement tools. I had a patch kit, useless for a gash. Edna arrived 20 minutes later in her Polaris, as if patrolling. "Trouble? Flat. Looks cut." She examined it briefly. "Sharp rocks on these roads. Happens." She offered no surprise. "I'll tow you back. Change it tomorrow when the owner brings a spare." I accepted. Back at the cabin, unease deepened. Elias watched from the porch, arms crossed. "Dad, I heard it last night. Calling my name. Like you." "I know, buddy. Why does she keep coming around?" I had no answer. That afternoon, confined indoors, Elias found an old photo album in a drawer, property history unlabeled. Faded images showed the cabin in earlier decades, guests smiling on the deck. In background shots along the northern trail, blurred shapes lingered among trees, tall, elongated figures partially obscured by branches. One photo, dated 1987, depicted a family near the now-closed loop. A note on the back, in different handwriting. They answered the whispers. "Never found." I closed the album. As dusk fell, the voices returned, stronger, multiple, using our names in familiar tones. Elias retreated to his room. I barricaded doors with furniture, though rationally unnecessary. Edna knocked at 7, offering firewood. I spoke through the door. "We're fine. Storm coming tonight," she said. "Stay inside. Whatever you hear, it isn't who it sounds like." She left logs on the porch and departed. The night stretched long. Whispers evolved into clear calls, pleading familiar. Branches scraped walls, or fingers. Elias joined me in the living room around midnight, unable to sleep alone. We sat by the dying fire, listening. I knew then we could not stay another night. Yet with the tire slashed and darkness absolute, escape waited until morning. One more night. I would keep watch. By 2 a.m. the voices had stopped circling and begun to settle. They came from one direction now, the northern tree line, where the closed trail began. The calls were no longer a chorus. They were single, patient, and perfectly matched to people we knew. "Nathan. Elias. Come see the old camp. It's just a little way. I have hot chocolate ready." The voice was mine, the exact cadence I used when coaxing Elias to try a new trail or taste a new food. Another voice answered in Mara's gentle tone. "Elias, sweetheart, it's safe. Daddy's already there." Elias sat rigid on the couch, knees drawn up, arms wrapped around them. His breathing was shallow, his eyes fixed on the back door. The fire had burned down to coals. The only light came from the kitchen nightlight and the faint glow of snow outside the windows. I had spent the last hour gathering what I could from the cabin and my truck. On the coffee table lay my work flashlight, the big 800-lumen one I carried on night inspections. 2 extra batteries, the small chainsaw I kept in the truck bed for clearing down limbs, a 50-foot orange extension cord, and the heavy-duty floodlight I used for bridge work. The chainsaw was gas-powered, a steel 250 I had bought used years ago. It started on the second pull every time. I looked at Elias. "We're leaving at first light, but we have to make it through the next few hours first." He nodded, small and scared. "They're trying to get me to go outside." "I know. They won't." I moved the couch to block the back door, then dragged the kitchen table against the front. I left one path clear to the mudroom and the side door that opened onto the deck. If something tried to come in, I wanted to control where it met me. At 3:15 the porch light snapped on by itself. I had not touched the switch. Through the window I saw the deck illuminated, snow falling gently now, and footprints appearing one by one, same bare, elongated prints as before, walking from the tree line straight toward the cabin. They stopped at the bottom of the steps. No one visible. Then the voice came again, right outside the back door, inches from the wood. "Nathan, open the door. Elias is cold." Elias flinched hard. I put my hand on his shoulder. "Stay here," I whispered. "Right here." I picked up the floodlight and the extension cord. I plugged the cord into the outlet by the fireplace, then threaded it through the mudroom and out the side door. I ran it along the deck railing, plugging the floodlight at the end. When I flipped the switch, the entire yard lit up like a stadium, bright white, no shadows. The footprints stopped abruptly at the edge of the light, as if the snow had been erased there. The voice retreated, but not far. I returned inside, locked the side door, and went to the front window. The northern tree line was now visible under the glare. Something tall and thin moved between trunks, more than one. They did not walk, they glided, limbs too long, heads tilted at wrong angles. Elias whispered, "Dad, they're waiting for the light to go out." I knew he was right. The floodlight was battery-powered, but the extension cord was not. I had maybe 3 hours of power before the breaker tripped or the cord overheated. I needed to end this before then. I went to the mudroom, opened the side door just enough to step out, and dragged the chainsaw onto the deck. I filled it from the gas can I had brought. The engine started with a low growl, then settled to a steady idle. I carried it down the steps and walked straight toward the northern trailhead, keeping the floodlight's beam in front of me. Elias watched from the window, face pressed to the glass. The footprints ended where the light began. Beyond that, the snow was untouched. I stopped at the boundary, chainsaw idling in my right hand, flashlight in my left. The whispering returned closer, from all sides at once. "Nathan, come see." I did not answer. I raised the chainsaw and stepped forward into the dark. The moment I crossed the line of light, the air changed, thicker, colder, smelling of damp earth and something metallic. The trees seemed taller, trunks wider. The trail I had walked earlier was gone. Instead, there was a narrow path of packed snow leading deeper, lit faintly by a greenish glow coming from below the surface. I followed it. 20 yards in, the path widened into a clearing. In the center stood a ring of old logging stumps, each one carved with the same radiating symbol I had seen on the tree. The greenish light rose from the snow between the stumps, pulsing slowly. The voices surrounded me now, clear and intimate. "Nathan, you promised him a good weekend." "Elias, Daddy's here." I raised the chainsaw and revved it. The sound drowned them for a moment. Then they appeared. They stepped from behind the stumps, 3, maybe 4, tall, thin, skin the color of birch bark, limbs unnaturally long. Their faces were featureless except for dark pits where eyes should be. They moved without sound, gliding over the snow, heads tilted as if listening. One raised a hand. The voice came from it, perfectly mine. "Elias needs you." I swung the chainsaw in a wide arc. The blade caught the nearest figure across the chest. There was no blood, only a dry, splintering sound like breaking wood. The thing folded in half and collapsed into the snow, dissolving into gray dust that drifted upward. The others hesitated, then advanced. I backed toward the trail, keeping the saw between us. One lunged. I caught it across the shoulder. It staggered but kept coming. Another reached for me with fingers that ended in sharp points. I dropped the flashlight, grabbed the saw with both hands, and drove it straight into its torso. The chain chewed through it, spraying more dust. The third turned and fled into the trees. I stood breathing hard, ears ringing from the saw. The clearing was empty now, the greenish glow fading. I turned back toward the cabin, following my own tracks. Halfway there, the floodlight flickered. Once, twice, then went dark. The extension cord had been cut. I sprinted the last 30 yards, chainsaw still running. Behind me the voices rose again, many now, overlapping, angry. I burst onto the deck, slammed the side door, and locked it. Elias was waiting, eyes wide. "They're coming," he said. I killed the chainsaw, set it down, and grabbed the floodlight's battery pack. I plugged it directly into the wall outlet inside, no cord to cut. The yard lit up again, brighter than before. Through the window I saw them, more than 3 now, standing just beyond the light, tall silhouettes swaying slightly. They did not cross the beam. I turned to Elias. We're leaving. Right now. We packed in under 5 minutes. I threw our bags into the truck bed, started the engine, and backed down the driveway fast. The truck's headlights cut through the dark trees. At the forest road, I turned left toward the highway, not stopping until we reached the county-plowed section and cell service returned. I pulled over at a gas station just after dawn, hands shaking on the wheel. Elias sat beside me, silent, staring straight ahead. I dialed 911. When the dispatcher asked the nature of the emergency, I told her I had encountered something dangerous on private property near Isabella and needed an officer. She transferred me to the county sheriff. Deputy Ramsey arrived 20 minutes later. I showed him the photos of the footprints, the carvings, the old album. I told him about the voices, the figures, the chainsaw. I did not mention the dust or the dissolving bodies, only that I had defended myself against intruders. He listened without interruption, then asked to see the cabin. We drove back together. The tire had been replaced overnight. The truck started without issue. When we reached Pine Hollow, the cabin was dark, doors locked. Edna's Polaris was gone. The deck was swept clean of footprints. The floodlight cord lay neatly coiled on the porch, no cut visible. Inside, the binder was open to the safety guidelines page. A new handwritten note had been added at the bottom. "Thank you for staying inside." Deputy Ramsey took the album and the photos. He said they would investigate, but his tone was careful, non-committal. He told us to go home and stay off the property for now. We left. 2 days later, Ramsey called. Edna Larson had been arrested for criminal trespass, vehicle tampering, and reckless endangerment. Apparently, she had been disabling guest vehicles and leaving misleading trail markers to keep people on the closed northern loop during certain moon phases. The sheriff's office was still investigating unusual activity reported by previous renters. They found no bodies, no dust, no carvings, only the old logging scar and a ring of stumps. Ramsey said the situation was contained. I did not ask what that meant. Elias and I never spoke of the voices again. He refused any future cabin trips. When Mara asked why we came home early, I told her Elias had gotten homesick. She accepted it. I kept the chainsaw in the truck bed now, full tank, fresh bar oil. I also bought a second floodlight and a longer cord. Some warnings are not about liability. They are about survival, and I no longer ignore them. Topic 5. Escape and aftermath. We drove south on the forest road without speaking for the first 30 miles. The sun rose fully as we reached the highway, casting long shadows through the pines. Elias kept his backpack on his lap, fingers clutching the straps, eyes fixed on the passing landscape. I maintained a steady speed, occasionally glancing at him in the rearview mirror. His face remained pale, but his breathing had evened out. The silence between us was not hostile. It was the kind that follows survival, heavy with unspoken relief. At the gas station near Isabella, after Deputy Ramsey had taken my statement and the photos, I purchased coffee and hot chocolate. Elias accepted the cup without comment, warming his hands around it. We sat in the truck cab until the deputy departed, then continued toward Duluth. Cell service returned intermittently. I sent Mara a brief message, heading home early. Elias is fine but tired. We'll explain later. She responded immediately with concern, but I did not elaborate until we arrived. We reached my apartment off London Road by mid-afternoon. Elias showered while I unpacked. Mara arrived an hour later, having driven straight from work. She hugged Elias tightly in the doorway, then turned to me with questions in her eyes. What happened? I provided a sanitized version. Vehicle trouble, unsettling noises in the woods that frightened Elias, a decision to leave early for his sake. I mentioned reporting the tire damage to the sheriff but omitted the voices, the figures, the chainsaw. She studied my face, sensing omissions, but did not press in front of Elias. She accepted the explanation of homesickness and took him home that evening. 2 days later, Deputy Ramsey telephoned. His voice carried the measured tone of someone accustomed to unusual reports in rural counties. Edna Larson has been arrested, he stated. Charges include criminal tampering with a vehicle, reckless endangerment, and multiple counts of trespass on her own managed properties. We recovered tools from her residence consistent with the damage to your tire: sharp implements, wire cutters. Previous renters have come forward with similar complaints: disabled vehicles, misleading trail alterations, strange occurrences during their stays. I waited. She claimed she was protecting guests from the closed northern loop, said the terrain was dangerous, that people had gone missing there in the past due to unstable ground. But the pattern suggests she was intentionally stranding visitors during specific times, particularly new moon periods when visibility is lowest. Did she explain why? Only vaguely. Mentioned old logging accidents, local folklore about the woods, taking people who wandered too far. She insisted the guidelines in the binder were necessary warnings, not threats. We're coordinating with state investigators on older missing persons cases tied to the area. And the other things? The footprints, the voices. A pause. No physical evidence recovered matching your description of intruders or unusual figures. The clearing you mentioned, the ring of stumps, was examined. Carvings appear weathered, possibly decades old. No recent disturbance beyond your own tracks and chainsaw residue. We logged the album and photos as evidence. I pressed carefully. What about the entities I encountered? Ramsey's response was deliberate. We found no bodies, no remains. The situation with Ms. Larson is contained. The property owner has terminated her management contract. The cabin will be closed indefinitely pending further review. I'd advise staying clear of that area for the foreseeable future. The call ended. Contained. The word echoed the one used in the original incident I had read about years ago. No resolution, only management. Elias returned for his scheduled evening the following week. He appeared composed, though quieter than before. We prepared dinner together, simple pasta, and watched a movie he selected. Afterward, as I tucked him into the guest bed, he spoke for the first time about the cabin. I don't want to go to any more cabins, Dad. Ever. I understand. Not even different ones. We won't. He nodded, satisfied. Over subsequent months, the nightmares diminished. He resumed normal activities, school, friends, hockey practice, but maintained distance from deep woods. Lakes and rivers were acceptable from a distance. Dense forest trails were not. I did not push. Mara and I communicated more frequently regarding his well-being. She noted the change in him, greater caution, occasional startle at sudden noises, but attributed it to the abrupt end to our trip. When she inquired further, I repeated the edited account. Some truths, I decided, served no purpose in retelling. I returned to work at Public Works. Inspections, repairs, routine reports. The predictability grounded me. Yet I made adjustments. The chainsaw remained in the truck bed, serviced regularly, fuel stabilized. I added a higher lumen floodlight kit and 2 additional extension cords, stored beneath a tarp. The folded trail map from the binder, with its crosses and marginal warnings, I kept in my glove compartment alongside registration and insurance papers. Not as proof, but as reminder. 6 months later, a brief article appeared in the Duluth News-Tribune. Former property manager sentenced in rental tampering case. Edna received probation and community service. No mention of supernatural elements, only erratic behavior and obsession with guest safety. The northern loop was permanently closed by the landowner, posted with new signage. Elias, now 12, has grown taller. Our weekends together shifted to urban activities, museums, movies, indoor climbing. He thrives. The wariness in his eyes when he once watched me, waiting for disappointment, has eased. Trust, rebuilt slowly, holds. I no longer dismiss unusual guidelines in rental agreements. When planning future outings, I read every line carefully. Some warnings exist for liability. Others exist because experience has proven them necessary. I have learned the difference, and I act accordingly.